Just super curious about all the different ways to make money.
Simply put, if you think what a flipper like yourself does for houses, you build a giant direct-to-seller marketing funnel.
Yep.
And then you dispo the leads in a variety of ways.
For you guys, what would you say is the predominant strategy?
The pawn shop model of we go out, we buy land for cheap, and then we sell it for more. So I think that's our bread and butter of between the two of us. We've done probably 500 land deals and
What's up, well builders? Today I've got two land guys on the show, and we're going to talk about how to make money in every way with land, whether you're subdividing, whether you're buying it raw, whether you're going to develop it, sell it to a potential builder like D.R. Horton, Lennar, any of these guys. I've got Dan and Mason. What's up, guys?
what's up, Ryan? Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
So I just got done on your podcast. We'll link to it down below. I think it was a great show, but I learned a lot about what you guys got going on with land, and so I'm just super curious about all the different ways to make money. Because to me, land is one of those things that nobody's really ever going after. You know, that's like exclusive for the big boys. Mm-hmm. And so anytime there's less competition, it's like there's great opportunity. So what does your guys' business look like right now?
Well, simply put, if you think what a flipper like yourself does for houses, you build a giant direct-to-seller marketing funnel.
Yep.
And then you dispo the leads in a variety of ways. It could be just a simple land flip, right? Could be an assignment. Could be you do small improvements. You could clear the lot, do a perk test, get it approved for a septic permit, and then flip it. You could take a large tract, subdivide it, and sell off the individual pieces. You know, just like if I buy a pack of waters at Costco, the cost per water is much lower than if I go buy a water at the gas station, all the way to the point of actually building on the land as kind of the ultimate strategy or the most value add strategy there is. If you think of taking raw land and you think of each step in the process of getting it to a building, whether it's a commercial building, a house, a apartment, whatever it might be, there is value or money to be made in each step.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you guys, like for you guys, what would you say is the predominant strategy?
I think where both of us got started kind of within the land flipping or land investing space was the pawn shop model of we go out, we buy land for cheap, and then we sell it for more. So I think that's our bread and butter of between the two of us. We've done probably 500 land deals, and it's great. The margins are great, and whether it's buy a lot for $10,000, sell it for $25,000, or buy a lot for $100,000, sell it for $250,000, that's kind of our bread and butter. And since then, we've both started expanding into, and Dan actually got started in the reverse way of doing new construction and building homes and selling them or keeping them as rentals. And now I'm doing minor developments where right now, next week, we're closing on 200 acres. We already have the plat map done, splitting it into 5 40-acre lots, and we're doubling our money just doing that right there. So it's a little bit where Dan said we've got all these different disposition strategies within our tool belt that we can use, but our active cash flow generating machine within the land investing space is just buy it for cheap, sell it for more.
Got it. Okay. So I guess what percentage of deals, let's just start from the easiest strategy, right? The easiest would be to just assign it. You don't have to close on it or anything else. What percentage of deals are you guys assigning?
Very few. I think I've done like 6 assignments this year because a lot of this is best sold to an end user, at least what I'm selling. And I think Mason is similar.
Yeah, we typically always close ourselves and then relist it on the market with a realtor. There's not a ton of financing solutions available for land, and depending on who you're dealing with, and that's something that I've learned through you of being able to utilize the novation strategy to go out and list it on the market. However, that's something newer that we're implementing into our business because of some of the challenges we faced of there's nothing worse than being dirt rich and cash poor of look at my balance sheet, look how much land I have. You know, I'm going to make $4 million flipping land this year if it sells. And so being able to get that if out of the statement and start doing more wholesaling, because I've done a handful of wholesale deals. Most of them have just been buy and sell.
Right. So, okay, there's not a ton of assignments because it's kind of like you're looking for that end buyer and it's just a waiting game.
So some people do build their business entirely around assignments, and it's just the type of land that they target. And so they go where there's lots of builders, where a lot of the big or at least medium-sized builders are. They talk to them first, and then they go get the product they're looking for.
I've heard of that.
Whether it's infill lots or going and taking the raw land, and you can go talk to Lennar or D.R. Horton and put an agreement together where if you take that raw land and get it to the point of maybe just having the paper plat done and recorded, or maybe having it recorded and then doing all the horizontal work to create the subdivision and finish lots for them, that's a whole nother business model that just takes a lot of capital.
Yeah, for sure. And time and just resource and energy. So, okay, assignments would be the easiest. The second easiest is simply just buying it, listing it, waiting for a buyer, right? Or to your point, you start using this innovation strategy like we do with our, now our house flips, really. You can now get to the end buyer without having to get all the capital. If for me, I don't know how many sellers are willing to do it, but that would be something that's like, man, you could overpay, or not overpay, but pay way more with no capital cost.
Yeah, and I think some of the challenges we run into where not too many of these sellers are distressed. However, I'd say our typical avatar for a lot of the deals we do are former developers or former builders that really understand the product. They're sophisticated.
They can list it themselves.
Yep, they can list it themselves, or they have these certain expectations in their mind where, okay, a land deal, there shouldn't be longer than a 15 or 30-day due diligence period and a 30 or 45-day close. And in certain markets, that can work great, and you're going to be able to turn around and sell it on the market in 30 days. You're getting offers as soon as you put it on the market. However, in a lot of markets, since land moves a lot slower, if you're in a more rural community, that timeline needs to be extended to 180 or 250 days. And a lot of sellers are not interested in that, especially now that the land flipping space is getting seemingly more competitive. They're getting blind offers in their mailbox every day of saying, hey, this person said that they could close in a week and can pay more. And whenever they encounter that and you're overcoming those seller objections, you just say, well, give them a call. I promise they're not going to answer the phone.
The offer.
Do it. Take the offer. And whenever they can't close with their terms, come back to us and we'll close with our terms.
Yeah.
One thing I want to add to that is we get a lot of older people who have signed a contract with someone who was trying to wholesale. The wholesaler failed.
Yep.
And so if you can provide proof of funds, a decent earnest money deposit, and certainty of closure, they'll give you a great deal like that. Especially in Florida, a lot of these people bought it for 5 cents on the dollar of what it's worth today.
Yeah.
And so we close deals like that all the time where it's, hey, I'm not going under contract with anyone without non-refundable earnest and a quick close, but I'll sell it at 50% of market value, 40% of market value. And so that's where knowing your market is really important. And we'll focus on lots that are in high demand. So we know that we can dispo them and we're comfortable putting up the earnest money and closing quickly. So sometimes, yes, there's absolutely a place for the novations, but sometimes the seller avatar, it just doesn't make sense. So,
right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this then, right? Obviously we'll talk about developing land and getting zone changes and subdividing and all that stuff. But, you're talking about where you market is so important for this and what your exit is going to be. And some people might just go straight to the end buyer first and say, hey, I know what my end buyer wants. Now let me go find that product. Whereas others might just say, hey, I love Florida. Let's blast Florida. What's your guys' strategy?
I think from macro to micro of the markets that we've done business in, one, there's always that certain degree of familiarity of, I live in Colorado, land is selling in Colorado, I should market to Colorado. But whenever you look at a larger picture, see where people are moving in the United States. People are always going to be moving to the Southeast, to Florida, the Carolinas, Texas, Arizona, there's always traffic going that way. Nevada, there's people moving there. So if you look at census data, that's a really good high-level metric of where I should target. And then from there, you start getting narrower and narrower where you look at the actual transaction data of how many lots have come on the market in the last 90 days versus those that have sold in the last 90 days. So you can start getting what your expected turnover time is. So where if in 90 days, 50 lots have come on the market and 100 have sold, you're probably going to be able to turn and burn in that market really quickly. And then you focus in on that specific area.
Got it. Okay. So what markets do you guys like so far?
So I love the Southeast. To expand on that, when I think about the economic situation when right now, interest rates, well, if you're in a market where there's huge amounts of job growth and then people moving there and you can still buy a new house for $250,000.
Yeah.
There's markets where I'm in the Southeast that have gone up dramatically this year because they're still cheap and there's a huge amount of people going there. So they tend to be more competitive, but that's okay because I've had a lot of success moving things quickly overall. So I prefer those markets personally, and I think about a lot of the geopolitics things that are happening, and reshoring is really happening right now within the U.S., right? A lot of manufacturers coming back. I want to stick to areas where that's happening, where if things get worse, around the world, if wars pick up, if the U.S. enters any, where is there going to continue to be economic growth and then people coming and the need for new housing? I want to stick there because I feel the most insulated.
Yeah, I think one thing I always tell students is when you're flipping or wholesaling, let's just use wholesaling for this example. You can't have both, right? So if in a market, if it's really competitive, it's harder to get a deal,
Yep.
but dude, you're going to sell it tomorrow,
Yep.
right? If it's easy to get deals, that means it's going to be harder to sell it.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get deals and there's so many buyers. Like that just doesn't logically make sense.
Yeah.
So I do agree though. I personally too would rather be in a market that has more demand. Even though, it's going to be more competitive, I trust my ability to market and sell and get those deals and knowing I got an easy exit.
Yeah. And I think it's what competitive advantage do you have in that particular market, where sometimes that'll only happen over time, of where there's markets that Dan is in and that I'm in that I know street by street. Of you can tell me the address and I say, oh, I know that because I bought the lot 2 doors down a year ago. And I think as I've done deals in, I think 15 or 16 states at this point. And now I'm kind of narrowing the scope to do a lot more deals in my backyard in Colorado, specifically closer to where I live in Colorado Springs, because I see the shifting demand. It's constantly rated one of the best places to live in the country. And as Colorado Springs and Denver continues to grow, there's going to be more demand in some of these rural communities on the outskirts of it. So, and speaking to the competitive advantage, I can say, hey, I'm going to go drive by your lot and go take a look at it. And I'll do that if I know I can make $400,000 or $500,000 in a 3-month period on it. It's worth my time to go spend an hour driving, taking my truck over raw land, off-roading, and having a fun time with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk about the other exit strategies then. So, I mean, you're picking a market, you got deals, you're not going to flip it as is. You're going to actually put some work into it. So what's like the first thing you look at?
Well, for me, I learned about land from the context of new construction. I had bought a couple of house hacks. I started in 2018, heard the bigger pockets, go buy 100 doors with no money, right?
Yep.
Quickly learned that it isn't really how it works. If you want to buy a lot of rentals, you need to make money.
Yep.
And so I started going to a real estate group in Colorado, met a guy who'd been doing land and development for his whole life, and would go down to Pueblo West every weekend and learn from this guy. And he was building houses all over the place. And so slowly started to learn, participate, help him any way I could. And so for me, new construction has been the main value add. And this is where the difference between raw land and finished lots is really important to understand, because I'll talk to people who've done development projects and they say, oh, it took 2 years to get a permit. It takes 3 to 4 weeks to get a permit where I'm doing business. So it's a failed subdivision from the 70s. You know, like Havasu?
Yep.
Same guy that did Havasu, the developer, did Pueblo West like 10 or 20 years later. He went broke, lost all the land. So you have a finished subdivision, with your plat done, utilities run, roads in place, most of it not built out. So all those lots are just sitting there. And so if you go to places like that, new construction can be very simple, very, very simple. When I got down there in 2018, 2019, you could buy a finished lot, infill, nice houses, water, sewer, power for $6,000. And right up the hill is Colorado Springs, where lots are $100,000 already at that time. And so it was irrationally cheap, finished lots. And so new construction in that context is very, very simple.
And then what I focus on more is areas where the minor subdivision or lot split process is super simple, where all you need is a surveyor to go out, draw a new plat map. Ideally, it already has a decent amount of road frontage, and you take one lot and split it into 4 lots or 5 lots or 20 lots, something like that. And the turnaround time is really quickly, and you increase the value by 2, 4, 5, 10x just by taking something that is large and potentially people don't want it. If we've got a friend whose motto is buy the ranch, sell it by the pasture. Yeah. There's plenty of people out, east of where I live that would love a 40-acre lot. Yeah. You can have a homestead. The well permitting process is simple. You don't have to deal with water rights. It's manageable, as versus a 400-acre lot they wouldn't know what to do with. And there's not enough buyers in the market to actually be able to afford it, which is, I think, where Dan's had a lot of success in the Southeast of, end buyer financing is not an issue because everyone can afford the $250,000 house. Not everyone can afford the $1.5 million piece of land.
Right. That makes sense. So it's interesting because, I think it's really market dependent. Here in Vegas, to go get a subdivision approved is not this process, like a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I own land, I've sent it to you before, Mason, but it's on this mountain, and around me, they've been working on it for years, getting this subdivision approved, and they're at the final stage. And they were like, Ryan, dude, it's now or never. If you're going to join the subdivision, you better join it now, because I know they've been working on it for years, and they finally are like at that final stage. And they're like, we think and even for them, they're like, but you got to join now to get the approval in 8 months. And it's like, this is crazy. Just like how slow this is here. And then like another thing is, and then, where I'm at is luxury land. I mean, they're $1 million plus lots, 10,000 square foot lots, and strip views and all these things. And basically the land, from what I realize is like you have to have it fully graded, fully everything, like utility, like it's just got to be build ready for it to have the true value.
So this is where finding the irrational amount of upside with very minimal work is kind of the key. So talking about the lots in Colorado, Mason's looking at, if you split those things into 35 acre or above pieces, you just get the plat map, the survey, new legal descriptions, you record it yourself. It's very easy, and it adds an unbelievable amount of value, right? Looking for those bets where the work is pretty minimal compared to the upside. Or in a lot of these North Carolina markets, if we simply go get the septic permit, it'll sell like that. And at a premium, the builders don't want to deal with it. It's irrational. It costs $500 in a lot of these markets,
right?
In a few weeks. And so looking for those places, both where the amount of work you have to put into that stage of value add is very minimal relative to the upside, but also always looking for the irrational pricing. Like I referenced Pueblo West in 2019 when we could buy a lot at $6,000 on market, a finished lot, and then put a $300,000 house on it. Any builder anywhere in the country would say that's crazy. They pay far more percentage-wise, 10 to 15% of the home value should be for the land.
Yeah.
We're paying basically nothing. And so looking for those irrational opportunities, because they're all over. The market is very inefficient for land.
Yeah. Why is it so inefficient?
I think this is where, talking about Pueblo West or Lake Havasu, developers, a lot of times, sometimes they're the wealthiest people you'll ever meet, and sometimes they're the most likely to go bankrupt that you'll ever meet. And so, as this has happened,
it's sexy though.
Yeah,
it is. It is. To
For
say
a big
I'm a
visionary
developer,
like me, I'm like, dude, I would love to build a golf course.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then, but I'm like, yeah, that for sure could sink me.
Yep. And that right there, there's the ego component of being a developer, being fund managers, which we've had so much
Country
fun.
Club, dude, we need it.
Yeah.
I want the young professional early discount, early buy-in number.
We got wealthy golf on the way.
There it is. So I think with that, a lot of these failed developments that have happened back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, banks are less likely to want to lend. And it kind of ties into some of the marketing material that we use, where so many people are like, we buy land for cash.
Yes.
You can only buy land for cash.
Pretty much, yeah.
And there's very few banks out there that are going to offer any sort of loan on the land, regardless of whether you're flipping it or building on it. There's only certain mortgage lenders that'll do a land home package at all, even if it's your own personal residence. So
yeah, what's crazy is I was actually able to get it on my land.
Yeah.
I got a 70% loan.
Yeah.
Where? No, community bank?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Here in Vegas. Yep. So when I bought my land in 2020, I paid $600,000, and they gave me, I had to put, like $200,000 down.
Mm-hmm.
I think most Americans have a different personal financial statement than you, so that might have something to do with
a role in it too. Yep.
Yeah. And that being said, there of course are community banks that will lend if it's in their network and they have a pre-established relationship.
No,
with
and I know it's like that's rare.
It's tough.
And if you go to one of these huge institutional players to get a land loan, they just don't exist. So the lack of institutional capital that's within this space makes it so where a lot of the mom and pop level developers or builders aren't able to figure this out. So they need people like us to provide them land at a discount that, potentially we could sell on terms or do some sort of novation agreement with the builder to be able to make it happen. It makes sense why there's people not able to execute this land development or land flipping at a huge level.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's so slow moving compared to just, I mean, real estate's slow.
Yeah.
But land is even slower, right? And so it's slower, so your cash conversion cycle is longer. There's lack of capital, you know, so like it's harder to raise for, it's harder to secure.
When you say those things to a banker, they're like, why would I invest in you?
Yeah.
Like that sounds really risky. That sounds scary, right?
How
there.
about you just buy a home?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, I would rather invest in that. Like there's something there already. And,
Well,
you know?
and this is part of why we have the housing problem, because it all starts with land and taking the raw land and turning it to finished lots that you can put housing on, which is really hard.
It's hard.
And to your point about going broke with the golf course, don't do it until you can finance it with cash. And if something goes wrong and you have to sit on that for 10 years, that needs to be okay, because that's what happens to so many of these developers. I'm watching a guy I know do a big project in Colorado, and he's like 6 or 7 years in. He sold off a piece of it to Richmond, but like the amount of capital and just pain in the ass he has put into this project, you have to be ready to be able to extend. You can't have the loans that people are getting on multifamily where, oh, this balloons in 3 years. You need a guarantee that you can extend it, or you're going to
You'll get hosed. Yeah. It's funny. So being a golf guy, I've gotten the opportunity to stay at Discovery Land Company is like the biggest luxury golf course community builder probably in the world. So like, you know, they have a community out here called the Summit, and the minimum piece of land out there I think is like 10 million for like a half acre.
Wow.
Yeah. The HOA is like, to join is like 500K. And yeah, so anyways, that's where like Mark Wahlberg and all these guys live. But they have it across the country or the world, actually. So they have like 30 communities. And so celebrities have all their houses. So like they have like 2 or 3 in Palm Springs alone. And that's where like the Kardashians and all these people are. Okay. So anyways, you know, I've gotten to play on the courses and visit and other things. And I got friends who own in there. And I've been kind of studying their journey because they've been around for like 30 years. And they've almost, you know, gone under multiple times, right? I mean, they're the best. But it has nothing to do if the macro around you is tough, or you know you're building in some city or some thing, and then they change. You know, they get slow stuff, and you know, it was just interesting to hear like what helped them get past all of this, and so, you know, how many times they were on the brink of you know not making it. And long story short, now you know they're freaking killing it. But what's interesting is, you know, there's still always like cash crunch and cash flow problems.
Sure.
Because they're in developments that are now like $1 billion developments. So I don't care how much money you've made. Like it's always going to be a problem. So they're constantly raising and everything else. And then what's cool too is they have other brands that or companies that have spawned from the people that have lived there. So like Casamigos, with George Clooney, he was in pretty sure he's Casamigos. You know, he's an owner in there. And so they tell the story of him and this guy, you know, the owner of Discovery. You know, they're all just hanging out in Cabo at one of their things. And they just start having this fun with the tequila and everything. And they go and get some tequila made like inside of Mexico. And they're like, we should just call this Casamigos. And it was just a joke. And then they're like, but what if this was a real thing? You know, we'd have George Clooney. He's got the brand, he can promote it. And then sure enough, start promoting it. And then they go sell this thing for $1 billion. That happened just because of the real estate. It's crazy.
Well, and I think the challenging thing is where in being able to create a development where you can feel okay charging $10 million for a 10,000 acre or half acre lot.
Crazy.
You have to have created a legacy and created a brand that allows you to be able to do that. Where if Dan and I went and created some golf community where I'm like, you know, a 12 handicap, you know, I've got, you know, a small podcast and everything like bombs. That. Yeah. Can hit bombs and then 4-putt it. But I haven't established a name of why would people want to buy a lot in my community. And it's taken this group 30, 40 years to be
the
able
best.
And that's why they've dealt with that cycle. And now people are interested in doing it. So it's a long-standing brand that you're able to not get yourself in such a hole that you're able to survive it. And I think that's one of the challenges why so many people will enter the land space and then exit, why so many developers are either super wealthy or broke or in jail or whatever it might be. So I think it's interesting within the world of social media and brand creation how necessary that is for certain developments that are getting built.
You know what I always thought so originally, and I still do want to do this, it's just not right now. But, I said this a year ago, like I wanted to build a golf course community, and I still do. My vision was always, especially if you're in a good market and there's demand, it's like, all right, well, you can kind of self-fund it because, if I acquire the land and I start pre-selling lots and everything else, I can start getting their capital to just keep, you just would have to keep selling in order for it to actually make sense. But it's harder to sell when times get hard.
Yeah.
So times have been hard the last year. And so, people aren't buying houses on golf courses as frequently as before.
Yeah.
And second homes especially.
Yeah. Well, and I think something else too is there's so many external factors beyond just the macro economy that are at play, where a local government can come in and say, you know what, impact fees for every lot that you are bringing on the market are going to go from $5,000 to $50,000. And I mean, we dealt with that with a lot we bought in Texas of impact fees went from $0 to $13,000 overnight.
Explain what impact fees are.
There's all sorts of fees you're going to deal with whenever you're doing new construction. You've got, if it's connected to community or city utilities like water, you might pay a tap fee for water, for sewer, for electric, and you might pay a fee for just impacting the environment and building something. You're paying building permit fees.
Digging a rock.
Yep. And that right there can absolutely kill a deal, where we've had deals that we killed in Colorado where we were going to do a 9-unit subdivision and extend the roads, and water tap fees were $5,000. But for each house that you brought online, you had to buy one share of the Colorado Big Thompson Reservoir, which is trading at about $75,000 per share.
Dang.
And the median home price is $350,000.
Yeah,
so you start doing the math,
Yep.
it's impossible to do it. And so that's one of the challenges too, where it's like, okay, well, we'll be able to sell the land for $500,000 a lot or whatever it is. But say all these changes happen at the local government level, at the city or the
After
county.
you bought it.
After you bought it, which can happen. You're not going to get grandfathered into those.
Yeah.
It can absolutely murder a deal.
Yeah. It's funny. That actually happened to me when I was first looking for land. So, the land that I bought that I was referencing to earlier, I was going to build my dream home on it. Now I'm good. I like where I live now, so no big deal. So I'm trying to sell it. But before I found that lot, I was looking at other lots that were near me. And they were trading for, an acre. I don't even remember what they're trading for, honestly, now that I think about it. It's irrelevant. But long story short, I found this killer deal that was like half the price per square foot. And I was like, okay, and they're like, he's willing to sell and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, bro, let's go. So I put it under contract. And, I have due diligence. So I hadn't been, this is 5 years ago. I hadn't even tried land or anything. So I put it under contract. And I'm like, I got this crazy deal. I have my friend look at it. He's like, bro, that is such a terrible deal. I was like, what? How? Look at the comps. He's like, it's in a flood zone. And I say, okay, so he's like, you can't build on it.
Yeah.
It's not even buildable. Yeah. And he's like, if you do wanted to build and you wanted to build on all of it, you'd have to build a pipe all the way through that entire, you see that? And he showed me, he's like, you see that like curve through, that's your flood zone. You would have to build an entire pipe underneath it and go over the pipe because the water's got to still be able to flood through.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so what does that cost? He's like, it's probably going to be $1 million to build that pipe.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, that's why this land isn't selling. But it was to that point of that land will never sell.
Yeah.
It's literally impossible to sell. Whoever owns it's screwed, because you could give it to me for free and it's still worth less than the other properties because they just weren't worth $1 million, period. And I'm like, what does that guy do?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We see this all the time. There was a lot of land companies that were less than ethical in the 60s, 70s that would do subdivisions and then market to out-of-staters. They'd fly them in. They'd have it's like something out of almost a comedy piece. How this used to go, they'd fly them in, they'd tell them it was all for free, but then there'd be a big sales pitch at the end.
Like a timeshare.
Yeah. Conceptually, that's what I was grasping for. And a lot of these subdivisions, they made it seem like, oh, this is in process of getting built out. You're going to come here next year, and all the roads are going to be in, and houses are going to be going up. There's a market I've done a lot of business in Colorado where you look at the plat map on the GIS. And, oh, these are all finished lots and roads. And no, only some of them are. Some of those roads never even got built, and people bought all the lots that are just grassland. There's just a plat. There's nothing in reality. And so that's all over the place. But all that to say, because I don't want this to go too negative, there's two things that I keep in mind to mitigate against this. Number one is becoming an expert in the markets you're in, where you do know it street by street. There's a lot of places you can give me an address, and I can tell you what I would pay for it. And if you're not an expert yet, that's where you need to find the local experts. And then number two, this is where kind of we joked a bit about the ego that comes with saying, oh, I'm a developer, or doing things just because it kind of stokes your ego. And so I think it's important to, as you move into bigger deals, make sure, number one, you're capitalized correctly, but don't stop the small stuff that sells consistently, that's predictable, that keeps the cash coming in. Because I've seen people do this where they go and try and do some big subdivides or new construction, and they get absolutely burned because they stop doing the little deals that have been working forever.
Yeah. So would you say you guys have like a majority of like little easier deals, and then you got a couple of big ones you're working on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
That makes sense. So, obviously you got to know the market, the due diligence, all the actual fees associated with doing the deal. What is there anything else that people need to be aware of when they're looking at land? Because I mean, to me as a house flipper, I'm like, oh, let's look at the comps. Like that's it. But it's like, nah, it ain't that simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the best places to start. Is what your prediction is going to be any semblance of reality? And land has comps just like houses. Back to what I said of how much land is actually selling in the market. And there's plenty of markets that we've done business in that if you looked at the comps, you would be like, no, I wouldn't touch it. Yeah. No land has sold in 2 years there. But you also look and say, oh, no land has come on the market in 2 years there. And so that's finding that local expert and having them involved in the process.
Like how you even know the comp.
And what's so interesting about it is that local expert is the most important thing. The due diligence process can be pretty standard kind of across the board with certain market-specific contingencies that you have if you're dealing in, Florida with wetlands or whatever, where we had a deal we almost did together out in New York. where,
I forgot about this.
Perfect example.
It was,
so we got this deal from Lead Kitchen, which is how Mason and I met.
Yeah, and Michael called me, and it was like, I was like, man, those are great terms. I've never heard of terms like this.
Tell them the terms we got.
So it was like I think a 29, 30 acre lot. Purchase price was $250K. It was $15,000 down, and no payments for 15 years, a balloon for $225,000. No interest.
My guy negotiated this.
And he brought it to me. I'm like, dude, I need to hire you. What are you doing here? And similar to the lot that you bought that had the floodplain in it that would have cost $1 million to do anything with. This one, you could look on the map, and there was a little bit of flood zone kind of in the corner, and there was a little bit of federal wetlands in the corner as well.
But you're like, you still got a lot of land.
Exactly. And I looked through the subdivision regulations and was able to determine, okay, we could get about 8 lots from it. All of this is going to be wetlands, which will be fine. It's, a nice community that you've got a creek in the back, and it's great. Yeah. I called the city commissioner of that town in New York, got him on the phone, and I said, hey, this is what our plan is with this lot. Can we do it?
You got the city commissioner on the phone?
Yeah. Yep.
How'd you do that?
I just called him. It's
small town.
Yeah. I mean, people that work with the city and county.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Yeah. And he would have been the one, that would have made the decision if we took it to, the planning board and everything. And he said, yep, that makes sense to me based on this, you could get this much on this road and, this many lots on the other road. And I was like, okay, dude, this is a grand slam deal.
We're going to kill it.
Because you hear that, you get 8 lots, and those lots, based on the comps in the neighborhood adjacent to that piece of land, we're selling at about $90,000 for a 1 acre lot. So conservatively, we estimated we would sell 8 lots at about $120,000, $130,000 each.
$1 million off $200K purchase.
Easy.
I was already counting the money.
Oh yeah, me too. Me too. I was like, man, this will be fun. We're going to film. We're going to talk about this deal. We're going to cash in. And I call a local realtor that one of the better land realtors I've ever spoken to in my life actually has sold, I think, 200,000 acres in New York. And I talked to him and he's like, oh, someone 3 months ago, a wholesaler tried to approach me with this deal and wanted me to list it for them. And I told them no, because it's entirely covered in state wetlands. And in order to develop this lot, you're going to have to pay in a wetland mitigation bank that is $80,000 per impact, which is about $80,000 per acre out there. So you would have been in at almost $2.2 million in fees to the Ducks Unlimited Wetland Mitigation Fund in order to do anything with it at all, which is why Michael got such a great deal on it, because there was nothing you could do with it. And there was a little sliver where you could have built a house or something like that. So the land was probably worth about $70,000. But by talking to a local expert, we saved both of us a lot of money on unrealized gains that would have never happened.
What about could you ever negotiate those things of like going to that commissioner? Because you're talking to him, you're like, bro, first off, why didn't the commissioner even know? That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, could you be like, bro, like there's no way to ever sell this land. Can you guys like waive fees?
You can attempt it, but I think going back to your question about why is this space so inefficient? I don't know, because the person in charge of these decisions didn't know, looking at it just right off the bat, that they weren't looking at the right layer on their GIS or something like that. And so you can always advocate for reduction in fees by doing some sort of grant. And
there's like tax abatements and all these things.
Oh, and economically disadvantaged zones and stuff like that. And I think that whenever you're working with the city or the county on a development project, getting these people on your side is great. But one of the challenges with it is sometimes whenever you go for those, reductions in fees or incentives that the government can offer, you're going to be beholden to whatever the government tells you you can do. So you might get deed restricted to only be able to provide low-income housing at 70% of what annual median income is for that particular house for the next 25 years or something like that, which makes it so where you're stuck with something in 2 decades where market rent is $4,000 a month and you're renting it for $900 a month or something like that.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. You know what I've learned too, and I learned this from the land game and just politics, anything that's political, right? It's like, you kind of just have to pay people. Mm-hmm. Like you just have to like lobby and pay the right people. Mm-hmm. Like how much does that go into it?
I think, give unto Caesar what is his, but I think, and none of us are advocating for, pay off, people in the local governments or anything, but I think it's just having these conversations where you're like, how'd you get the city commissioner on the phone? They answer the phone. It's just like, write your favorite author and they respond. People want to talk about what they do. A lot of people in politics, especially at the local level, are in it because they really care about their community. So talk to them and talk about what they want, where I've got this workforce housing project that, we've been working on for 2 years now, have fired a few different contractors, and it's finally moving along. And the city inspector was at the house yesterday, or the commercial property yesterday, to just do a walkthrough. And there was definitely some work that got done at the house that probably shouldn't have gotten done. But my contractor is saying, oh, we're going to have all these units for affordable housing in the community. This is what we're doing. The owners want to put in a bus stop for the city because the bus stop's right in front of the house. And he's like, oh, I love what you're doing. The mayor supports you guys. And just having those conversations, figuring out what they want, and then executing on that vision, I think helps.
Yeah, I was just going to say, have it ahead of time. If you are thinking, oh, can I do this, or I want to do this, go and talk to the decision makers first. Yeah. And it kind of, satisfies their ego a little bit too, that you're coming to them, and then that'll help. Because as an example, in Pueblo West, where I've done the builds, if you want to build 3 or more units, it's commercial. And they haven't said it overtly, but so there's a metro district that oversees the community along with the regional building department. And the metro district, they don't want multifamily. Again, they won't say it, but they will make it so economically impractical that almost nobody will do it. So that's why I'm bullish on buy and holds there and buying rentals there, because they make it almost impossible to bring on new supply if it's over 2 units. And so you need to know that ahead of time before you buy the multifamily lot, because people are buying multifamily lots. They don't know what they're getting into.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, and I just know from having people on the pod and just having rich friends who develop things, it's like, it's politics. It's just a game of lobbying, and it's a game of, that's why I was like, how'd you get the commissioner on the phone? Well, like, yeah, I mean, in some small town place, whatever, right? But if I want to go get the Nevada commissioner on, it's going to be a little different.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, somehow we're going to have to get in touch with them. And it's like, all right, have you supported them? It's like,
Look at your last ballot. And It's the exact opposite person.
I don't even think that they care if you vote. It's like, did you support their campaign? And like, it just kind of is what it is.
Yeah, and there's a lot to that within development. And my background was healthcare. I was CEO of a hospital, which is probably the most regulated industry in the United States. And we had weekly meetings with our lobbyists to ensure that legislation was getting pushed through that made it easier to provide care or more lucrative to provide care in the community. And I think that there's a lot more of that goes on in this world, whether it's healthcare or oil and gas or development and everything in between, that people recognize, and or maybe they do recognize it, but they don't realize how much money is actually flowing within all these systems.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What made you even, speaking on that, you were a CEO of a hospital at a young age. Why did you get into land flipping?
I kind of grew up in a family where it was a little bit of the rich dad, poor dad, of parents are divorced, and I have my mom and stepdad that were very, economically stable, engineer, very much so, no debt or anything. And then I had the dad that was kind of the commercial real estate investor, and didn't see him work too much, so was always interested in real estate investing. And I read every book, I listened to every podcast, and Bigger Pockets, and couch flipping never panned out for me, so I had to figure out something else, and worked my way up in the corporate world.
Yeah, by the way, it takes a lot of skill. Like, I mean, managing being the CEO of a hospital is not.
It's nothing compared to like picking the right brand of couch and steam cleaning it appropriately,
washing it properly,
the right pictures, and
yep.
being able to load it up.
I get why you failed, but go on.
I know. And it's true. It's true. But, so I worked my way up in corporate America, had, alleged success, became a young CEO of a pretty large hospital, and I just never felt fulfilled. And I think that once I'd consumed all the content I possibly could have on real estate investing, I got introduced to the idea of land flipping, and it was one of those things that seemed too good to be true. But I paid some money on a program and sent out, I think, 346 mailers. Got a deal where I bought 3 lots for $40,000, all in at $43,000. I sold them for $185,000, and was like, well, I mean, I made $115,000 on about an hour and a half of work. This is more lucrative than being a CEO working 100 hours a week and having high blood pressure and stressed all the time. So, that first deal kind of propelled me into being able to take it and do it full time.
Yeah. What about you?
I grew up in a cornfield in Ohio where no one ever left. Very
Sweet.
rural. Nothing ever happened there. My friends' parents all grew up there. And so I worked through high school, worked full-time through college, paid for it. And I was finishing school, and it's like, well, if I can do 40 to 45 hours a week of work plus full-time school, I can certainly start a business, so I don't have to stay here, so I'm not stuck. Because everyone was stuck. My parents couldn't see their siblings, their parents, because they didn't have money, and they were just working, so they were stuck. So I saw money as a means of freedom, really.
Right.
So I started reading books, and like everyone else, it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So read that, went and bought a duplex as a house hack, because I found Bigger Pockets right around then. Moved to Colorado, bought another house hack, and then that was around the time I realized, I need to figure out how to really make money if I want to buy a bunch of rentals. That's when I met the guy at the real estate group. He started teaching me about land development, and then slowly that's where Front Range Land came from, my active day-to-day business. So been doing that along with buying more and more rentals since 2018. So, Yep.
How many rentals have you bought since then?
Up to 26 with the one that's finishing this week. Got a new construction duplex just finishing up.
Nice.
Yep.
So just all the active income profits from land flipping.
Yes, and you know what, to your point, both on when we interviewed you and now, in hindsight, I do wish I was quicker to reinvest and scale the land business.
That would have made you more money.
Yeah, it would have made me more money. A few of the rentals have been really nice, especially the ones I bought in 2018 have created a nice base. But yeah, I think prioritizing just getting better at building a business, hiring good people, and putting money into making that engine turn would have been a better decision than a lot of those rental properties.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell people this all the time. I'll say it on this because I don't think I've ever said it on the podcast. But the 4 things to invest in this particular order are: number 1, yourself. right? Like you only go as far as you know in the knowledge you have and your wisdom and your understanding. And also too, the way you just, how big you think. It's like, whenever I go to, I remember the first time I went to Grant Cardone's office, I was like, I need to change my office up. Like I now see what we need. And so like that workshop space out there was because I saw his. And so I started to think bigger. And I have a lot of people who tell me that after they come on the podcast, like, bro, I need like a set like this. That's like thinking bigger. So I try to always invest in myself first and not try, I do. Okay. That's the best investment, number one. Once you figure that out, the next best investment's your business. Hey, let's start funding the business. And this is strictly for entrepreneurs. If you're W-2 and you don't want to run a business, I get it. You can just jump straight to buying rentals and stocks and whatever, right? But if you're an entrepreneur, the next best investment is not a stock. It's not someone else's deal. It's not any of those. It's your business. And that means investing in infrastructure, softwares, marketing. You'll make more money just getting more leads. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to. So invest in your business. Once you've done that, the third thing is now you got to invest in people. Your business is only going to grow with people. If you got a business that constantly gets deals and you're bringing up land and all this stuff, all right, we need people now. We need to get more salespeople. We need to get capital raisers. We got to hire more people that can help scale this business. And then the fourth and final thing, which is what people jump into and kind of what you refer to is now, okay, let's invest in now like the passive things that I don't really have much influence over. Once I buy the duplex, it is what it is. Once I buy the stock, the Bitcoin, it is what it is. There's nothing I can really do to it. Whereas my business, I have major influence over what I can do to it and how I invest the dollars and what we do with it. But that's the 4-step process. Whereas most people, they don't even invest in themselves.
Yeah.
They're just like, yo, I'll put it in stocks. I'll put it in a rental. Like, I don't trust me.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say this earlier. What I like about this, and I wish I understood this sooner, is if you learn how, number one, the investing in yourself, better your skill set, but especially learn how to hire people. That's one of the biggest points of leverage right off the bat that is applicable to any business. If the government changes, if the economy changes, and you can't do what you're doing now and you have to go start something else, well, if you know how to put systems in place and hire good people, you can go start another business. And so that's really powerful.
Yeah. So, everyone needs to just follow that path. But what's interesting is, actually, I was just thinking about this while we were all talking. I was just talking about like the pay to play thing with these lobbyists and these politicians and everything else. And it's true. It's not just land development. It's everything in life. Like, dude, if you want to get in a room, you got to pay for it.
Yeah.
Whether you're doing a mastermind, an event, or anything else. And it's like, the reason, how many land guys and things are like, dude, can we be on the podcast and everything else? Like, is almost always no. The reason we're even here today is because, Mason was a client of Lead Kitchen. And it's like, dude, he's been a great advocate and had success and everything else. And so, it's like, bro, okay, this guy's like investing into what I'm doing. Cool. Bring him in.
Sure.
Right? And that's just, people don't understand. That's just how the world works.
And it's not even...
Real estate investors, I found a brand new way to create cash flow that's better than anything else I've ever done. It's better than rental properties, Airbnb, my flipping business, multifamily. It's the best thing we've done yet. It is building an automated wholesale business. Now you might be saying, Ryan, how do you build an automated wholesale business? Well, what if you had the same exact leads that I get every single month? What if you had a sales script that was so easy to close deals over the phone that you could do it all across the country? And what if you could sell your deals directly on the MLS without a real estate license and without having to actually own the property and getting top dollar? Well, we do that with this new method. And I made an 11-minute video where I go over how it all works, how you can start doing it today. So if you want to go see that video, go to wealthyinvestor.com, go click the case study and see what I'm talking about.
I feel like people will hear that and sometimes think it's quid pro quo or transactional relationships, and it's not. You're bringing value into each other's lives in different ways where we're both making each other more money by doing it, and being able to have conversations with new, interesting people with different talents, temperaments, and convictions makes us think about business in a different way, which is fun and exciting. And you can get to play golf together, which is always fun. Some of the best conversations happen there. And I think in the idea of paying to get into the right rooms or anything like that, people might hesitate of like, no, I should do it on my own merit. And it's like, well, yeah, kind of, but it's also, don't be so self-certain in yourself that you think your way is the right way. Who are you, some broke guy that, decided that whatever path that you read about, is the right way to do it? And I met a developer that they were looking for, I think, $3 million of equity infusion into their deal. And I was talking to some of the brokers involved with it, and I was like, what do they need money for? They've done, I think at this point, 6,000 units of BTR communities. And I was like, how did he raise all the money before? And they said, oh, just, how it is of rubbing shoulders at the country club. And they literally meant rubbing shoulders at the country club. Of he would go out to the bar at the country club and get 400,000 here and 300,000 there. And I promised that country club wasn't a free place to get into. And I think that by surrounding yourself with the right type of people and helping them out, of your friend that has the education program that you don't understand, take it. See what they're talking about and seek to understand people. And I think your relationships are going to start being a lot more fruitful.
Yeah. The key is that you have to add value to other people. And I always tell this to people. There's only 3 ways to add value, okay? At least in the business world. But way number 1 is the most simple way is you pay.
Yep.
So you just pay. That's business 101. You pay for a service. The second way you add value is you're actually going to teach them something that they don't know, right? So it's like, I've had a lot of people who have hit me up and they're just like, dude, they're super famous people who I'm like, oh bro, I would love to learn from this person. But they're like, hey, I got a question for you. I've seen your content. And it's like, bro, now we have a relationship. There's no money exchanged. It's just value-based in terms of knowledge and resources. And then the third way is exposure. So you can help people have attention. And so that's the beauty of having a podcast, right? If you have a platform where people can get exposure and attention, it is valuable to them. It will come back to their business and everything else, right? And so, when I have a guy like Grant Cardone on, it's like, I didn't pay him to come on. He obviously didn't pay to come on. But he's going to get exposure. At the end of the day, he's going to have exposure and it's going to help him out. That's why he's willing to come on. I'm not really teaching him anything new, but the exposure's there. And so, I think people just need to realize that, because there will be people who, and I think it's all about their ego, but they're like, bro, let's just use the podcast example. Dude, I've done all these deals. Like, I've done so many more deals than some of the people you've had on. I'm like, okay, so what do you bring to the table? Like, you've never been in any of our stuff. You've never come to an event. You have no following. You're not going to bring any new eyeball. Nobody knows you.
But you owe them for whatever reason.
Yes.
It's entitlement. It's ego. You ain't paying anything to come on. Like, so what do I owe you for again? It's just like people, but that's how people think. And so I want people to understand, like, it's a value game. And there must be value exchange both ways. It's like, well, yeah, you became a customer at Lead Kitchen. Great, you paid. We now have to deliver and make sure that you get leads and that you like it and that you have value. It's not just you pay and then it's done. And then it becomes, oh, cool. Like, we like working together. This is great. Let's do other stuff together. Let's do a podcast. Let's go golf. Let's go do that. But it starts with somebody taking that first step towards doing something of value, because somebody has to take the first step.
Yeah. And I think that whenever you get to your level, or, even where Dan and I are at, what we can all agree on is time is our most important resource. I've got a wife at home, and you've got a wife and kids at home. And Dan will one day, maybe get a wife or something like that.
Grow up one day.
And I like spending my time playing golf and spending time with my family and doing all these fun things. And business is fun for me.
Yeah.
But I get hit up pretty often on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram of, hey man, I'm interested in this.
Can I get coffee?
Can we get a coffee? Can we get a coffee?
Pick your brain.
Can I pick your brain? All this stuff. And it's like, well, it reaches a point of, you can if you pay me and make it worth my time to actually have this conversation in some capacity. Or take a look of, I've got, dozens and dozens of podcasts I've been on, and we've got, 70, 80 shows now. It's like, take a look and figure out what you can learn on Google before something else, and then maybe see how you can add value to my organization. If we're very transparent of, hey, this is what we're looking for, this is what we need, we need more deals, or we need to raise more accredited investor capital, or whatever it might be, and add value in some capacity.
Well, and there's even simple ways. Like I've had people who are like, Ryan, dude, I bought your book. The book, I don't make nothing on the book. Okay, like, dude, I bought your book and it really impacted my life. Like, would you come on the podcast? Like, I want to talk about it. I'll be like, yeah, dude. You've at least shown some way of that. Like, you took the time to buy the book, read it, actually have some feedback about it. Like, that's valuable. And it shows intent. Whereas people who just kind of come with a handout, who don't do anything, it's like, bro, you got to check yourself. Nobody owes you nothing.
Yeah, I had a girl at my real estate group back in Colorado who she volunteered to manage rentals for me at a really reasonable rate. And you better believe I've connected her and helped her with everything I can. Introduced her to my builder, gave her all my SOPs. So little things like that. You don't necessarily have to have money if you have some skill set that would benefit the person you're trying to talk to. So,
yeah, you got me thinking about the country club too. I just bought a house in the country club and currently renovating it. But you know who I bought it from? A member in the country club.
Yeah.
Who I golf with. And it was literally the cheapest sale in the country club in 2 years. And, I saw him list it and I was like, huh. Well, I didn't even know he listed it. Like, I just saw it listed. I was like, all right, that's already pretty cheap. Like, I haven't seen one that cheap in a while. And I was like, I'm gonna go make an offer. Why not? I'm not even looking to move. I'm gonna go make an offer. And before I make an offer, I actually look up the tax. I'm like, actually, let me just go see who owns this. I'm like, oh, it's my friend.
Yeah.
And so I hit him up, and him and I have golfed, a few times before and all this, and we've talked business and other things. And I was like, bro, what you doing selling this house? And he's like, oh, it's this rental I've had. He lives in there, and it's like, it's a multi-million-dollar rental. And so I'm like, so I was about to lowball you. You know exactly how I roll. And, you can't do innovation. It's already listed. And so I'm like, bro, what's the plan? And so we just get to talking, and he's like, yeah, I can't take that low right now. But, if it doesn't sell in a couple of months here, like, I'm definitely open. And then he hits me up like a month later. And by the way, this is also a good lesson with follow-up for everyone listening. If a seller tells you, hey, hit me up, a week from now, cut it in half.
Yeah, yes. That's one of our SOPs. That's excellent.
Go.
Yep.
That's my SOP too. Yep. It's always cut in half.
Yep.
Hey, can you hit me up next month? Yeah, I'll hit you up in 2 weeks. Can you hit me up in 2 months? Yeah, I'll hit you up next month. Cut it in half. Or even more. Yeah. But nonetheless, so he hits me up in a month and he's like, all right, bro, like, where do you really need to be? And so we go back and forth for like literally 3 texts, and then we had a deal. And essentially, even for him, he's like, dude, I want to get out of it. I'm not super concerned. I mean, dude's worth a lot. And he was like, honestly, I just want to start doing a transaction with you and see, where our business relationship goes.
Yeah. And I think whenever you're operating ethically, both in your personal life and your business, and adding value to the relationships you're creating, there's so many examples that I think Dan and I can both draw on of, we just bought this, it's a land deal, but kind of a quick flip deal out in Colorado, and it's a messy divorce situation. And, the ex-husband said the ex-wife didn't have the right to sell it. And I've been super respectful in all these conversations, helping him move all the stuff out of the house. And now the sister that owns the lot next to me wants to sell to me. Yeah. And the cousin that owns land right down the road wants to sell to me of this transaction that initially I didn't expect to have any of these conversations, but by helping these people and just being kind and generous with
providing
them,
a great service,
it's, turning what's going to be, a $60,000, $70,000 profit deal into, a $200,000 profit deal just by navigating the relationship appropriately. So this idea of adding value, you need to do it both in your personal life, or if you look up to people and want to, do business with them or have a conversation with them, but also just your sellers.
Yeah.
Being able to do that, you never know who they might know. And don't forget to ask that question of, hey, do you have any friends or family that own land or own a house that are also looking to sell? Have that in your SOPs.
We actually added a new thing in our SOP of, hey, is this the only house you want to sell?
Mm-hmm.
And we just added it like last week. So it hasn't produced any fruit yet, but it's something I never even thought to ask, right? Speaking of that, right, how are you guys finding deals?
So mail and cold calling for me. And it's just pulling the data and focusing on hitting them consistently, where there's a lot of markets I've been mailing for 4 or 5 years. Oh yeah. Because it's just like in Colorado, I get all these mailers for houses, Purple Mountain home buyers, and I'll get them over and over and over again because they're just trying to be ever present in everyone's mind that fits their demographic. So when they're ready to sell, they call them. Happens for us all the time where the 10th mailer in, they're ready. And they call us and they say, hey, I kept a couple of your mailers.
I've seen you guys.
Yep. So yeah, all direct to seller for me. And then for some of the subdivides, I know you're getting some on market. And
Yeah. So I direct mail marketing. I've outsourced cold calling and texting. I think I'm going to bring it back in-house now. And then I don't know if you've heard of this service. It's called Lead Kitchen. It's
I've heard of it. Yeah. I probably say it every other word.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But no, it's social media ads through Meta of Facebook and Instagram, where I know I was a test subject for you, and holy crap, the first response was outrageous. So I think we got like 95 leads in the first week. I want to say I spent 300 or 400 ish on it. Granted, most of them were house leads at that point. So which I don't want house leads, but luckily I know someone that wants house leads, and that works out really well. So I think it's great because as land becomes more competitive, people hear this podcast and want to start land flipping, or our show or other shows and everything. And direct mail is not saturated by any means, but it takes a long time to get a deal. Cold calling is not saturated by any means because we don't view anyone that's doing business as our competition, because we actually answer the phone when sellers call us, so we get a lot more deals than people. But I do think social media has worked really well for us, because I think you've probably, and you would have more insight into it, of how many people say, oh yeah, I want to sell my house to you guys, or I need to sell it quick. I also own the lot next door, or I also own some land or something like that. And so many house flippers or wholesalers out there are like, dude, I don't know what to do with land. Like, I don't care about your land. Don't tell me about your land. And if they'd be willing to sell it with the house, where it's $0 and they could go flip that land for $30,000 or $40,000 and make more than the assignment fee, you're leaving a ton of money on the table. Or you could call Dan or myself and we might be able to do something with it too.
Yeah. What's funny about it is, I remember when you first came on, we had a call and I was like, yeah, honestly, I don't know how it's going to work. We're going to have to test some things, and still we're going to keep testing things and refining. But my thought was, I was like, well, I've never seen anyone doing any social media ads like for land. I don't see people saying, hey, like, I'll buy your land and everything else. Dude, so I went out in the desert. I just started filming ads, me just in the middle of nowhere. Like, dude, you got one of these? I'll buy this. Yeah, this land. And, obviously it's working, but it's just funny because, as I've thought about land flipping, it's like, there's not really many ways to get them to come to you. Like, you have to really just hit them up, cold call them, make relationships with realtors and brokers. Like, it's kind of very old school, and I don't want to say good old boys, but that's how commercial real estate really is. Like, it is very relational. It's very hard to get the sellers to just come to you. And so I was like, I don't know if it's going to work, but let's try it out.
The avatar has been so different, at least for cold call and direct mail. It is, again, like we talked about earlier, they don't care about a quick cash close. They've owned this for 20 years. They're not broke. Right. Well, and so a lot of times these people are like upper middle class, or a lot of times they're wealthy because they live in a different part of the country and they own land in different places that they bought a long time ago. And so for us, the number one thing that has got us deals consistency is legitimacy. And they're afraid of scams. And so we have a nice FAQ sheet. Here's our attorney or title agent, depending on the state we're in. Call them. We can send you proof of funds. Just legitimacy has been the number one motivator on the minds of the sellers that we've been doing business. So that's been useful in that a lot of people come from house wholesaling, and their entire pitch is speed and convenience, which sometimes matters to them, but a lot of times legitimacy more than anything, especially in the competitive markets.
They're not in land foreclosure.
Yeah, exactly. But especially, it's almost all the coaching programs and competition have been of benefit in some places because so many sellers have signed a contract and they didn't close. And they're so frustrated. If they believe you can close, they'll sell it to you at a great price.
Right. That makes sense. So, even with that, I think there's just so much opportunity you know, in the land space to flip and do deals. What do you think are like, what are the things that would not be good that people don't see?
That's a good question. I think that it's targeting markets where, just like with houses, of if end buyer financing is going to be an issue or the builders are not going to be able to build, where I think my biggest pain point in my business is what's considered luxury land, of this piece of land that we bought for 350 grand. Just, you know, it's a 4-acre lot in a nice community. My realtor at the time, that I have since fired and hired another one, said it was worth 750 grand and had comps to show it and everything like that. However, there's not very many people that live in that particular community, and there's even fewer that can afford to go buy a $700,000 piece of land and put in. I mean, there's comps of houses selling at $3 million that, you know, theoretically you could, you know, put a house on and even as an investor make a good amount of money. We're now on the market at $465,000 18 months later, and, you know, eventually it'll sell and it's fine. But that's a good amount of money to just have sitting out on the market of my own cash that I could go put into, you know, 40 deals at $10,000 each or something like that. And so I think
you're going to feel good. They're going to be selling, and you're not just sitting here waiting for one big pop.
Exactly. And so I think the luxury land is a real challenge that I personally I'm avoiding, because there's a limited buyer pool and it takes significantly more capital. So I think for me, coming from operating a 9-figure P&L and you know, making 6 figures on my first flip, I'm like, if I don't make 6 figures on a flip, I shouldn't do it.
It's not worth my time.
And you know, I see Dan making, you know, 15, 20 grand over and over and over again. And I'm like, what the heck is this?
Nice.
Like, and so I think that right there is where I would particularly avoid within the land flipping or,
One other, kind of on the flip side of that, is don't be the person that goes and buys the paper lots where they don't exist in reality and sell them to unsuspecting buyers that think that it's a real lot that they can go build on.
What do you mean is a paper lot?
So if you're taking raw land and developing it, you have to get a physical or a paper plat approved, right? You go on your GIS and you can see all the roads and the lot dimensions, right? The plat.
Yeah.
It doesn't start like that. It was just raw land. And so that's part of the process. And then once that's done and approved, then you can go on and physically create roads and bring in utilities and all that. There's lots of subdivisions that were only taken to the paper plat or partially taken to the paper plat. It's recorded. So when you look on the county website, you see lines for lots and roads, but they don't exist in reality. It never happened. And so people will go, but like there's a huge, it's like Rattlesnake Acres outside of Albuquerque, where there's a huge scam where it's just desert land. There's no streets and utilities. They did the paper plat, so you go on the GIS, it's recorded and it looks like it's there, and there's nothing. And so
it's not a satellite view, because ours is satellite view.
Well, there's that too, but it's people still get scammed. People still buy this stuff.
So if you look at the satellite view, you can see here's all the individual parcel boundaries and the APMs and everything, but there's nothing there. And I think a lot of people will start this business by, what's the lowest barrier to entry? Because you hear land flipping of, hey, you know, buy a lot for 40,000, sell it for 185, or buy a lot for 5 and sell it for 10. Of a lot of people get started buying lots for $100 and trying to sell them for 2,000 or 3,000, and they can't do anything with that land.
$100
So,
land.
And that's how,
no, I know it's real. It's just funny.
Yeah, and it happens. I mean, I've bought land for nothing. Of the title insurance cost more than the actual land itself, and they've been decent deals, but so many of those.
That's a headache. Yeah, it's not worth all the headache to make a couple $1,000.
Yes.
Well, and think about
there's a median, like 15, 20 grand. Right?
Absolutely. And think about the lot that you almost bought. It wouldn't surprise me if, you know, what's going to happen is a poor unsuspecting land flipper is going to see the comps and be like, oh,
I'm going
to kill it. I'm going to buy this lot for $150,000, sell it for $500,000, and I'm going to be set for life. And then they're going to buy that land. They're not going to do all the appropriate due diligence, and then they're going to get stuck with that land for the rest of time. So I think unusable land is another place to stay away from.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of it.
Yeah,
you know, there's a lot of it. But even with that scenario, so you know, we obviously sent you that deal, and you know, we had locked it up in a contract. I'm sure we're gonna get more, and we'll just send it to you because we don't even want to deal with it, right? Mm-hmm. How much of your deal flow comes from people like me that are like actively doing deals, and we're just like, we ain't trying to deal with this?
You know, Not as much as you would think. I do get them in my inbox from time to time, but sometimes,
It's just junk.
it's just junk, or they've locked it up under contract, at it's worth $25,000. They've locked it up at $31,000
Yeah.
because they don't know land.
Yeah.
But within our funding company, we get deals all the time submitted to us of they don't have the capital to actually close on it, and a lot of times it's quick because they've been trying to wholesale it, but they haven't been able to use the right channels, or maybe they're not allowed to market it on the MLS or something like that. And so we come in, provide the capital for them, and then list it on the market with an agent. And
So you guys are doing JVs through your funding company.
Yep, exactly.
It's a massive opportunity. It's crazy. Just in the land flipping community, how many people cannot close and they lose great deals where they're at 60% of market.
They just couldn't find a buyer in time.
Yeah, they couldn't find a buyer and they don't have the cash to close, or they got that seller who's ultra afraid of assignments because they've been burned. They want 20-day close, no assignment language, right?
But the price is good.
But the price is great. It's somewhere so there's a huge opportunity there. So we're pursuing that aggressively.
And we're closing on a deal in Florida for $7,000 or something like that. And $6,000. We'll sell it for
20,
high teens, low 20s.
Yeah.
And we get opportunities like that submitted to us where they can't close on a $5,000, $10,000.
You're like, that's an easy one.
It's crazy.
And
Yeah.
we get deals that are 10, 11 million submitted to us that are the long-term development plays and everything like that. And you
There's
pencil
only a
them out
couple
of
of people
hey,
that can
it'd
do
be
it.
a 3-year exit, and if everything goes right, you buy it for 11, you put in 3 million, you exit for 29, 30 million.
That's a good deal.
But
you gotta have the capital.
Yeah,
gotta have the capital.
that's the problem. Yeah.
Right? There are very few people that have the capital that can sit for 3 years to go take that down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is ultimately what we're setting out to solve, is to connect people with us, experience in this space, and getting better and better, more experience, and then connecting with institutional capital like that. That is like our goal, because it's just a blue ocean.
How is it with institutional capital on a deal like that?
So the challenge in this space, I feel like, is it's really easy to raise money from the 3 Fs of friends, families, and fools that are interested in investing with you. And you can get capital anywhere from 5% annual to 20, 30% annualized, depending on the deal flow cycle. It's decently easy to get $25 million of the family offices, the private equity groups. They don't get out of bed and they're not willing to spend the legal costs unless it's worth their time. That being said, that 25, 30 million, they're okay getting 9% return over a 3-year period because they have 500 million they're looking to deploy, and they're looking at the different asset classes of, hey, we're going to have some that we're going to take a huge risk on and a huge bet and get 100, 200, 2,000% return. We have some that we want to, 3%, 4% fixed, and finding that money. So we've, been approached by different groups that have a lot of money that want to invest, but we hold back of, I think mistakes love a rush decision. And if we got 25 million in our pocket at one point in time, I think we would end up accidentally buying the lot that we think is worth 600,000. That's worth that's worth nothing because we're like, we need to deploy all this capital really quickly. So it's being able to have the appeal of the geographic diversity of doing some land flips, some minor subdivisions, and maybe even some larger developments that groups just need an equity infusion. Then it turns into a fund of a fund, and then it turns into a job, and you have to just deal with the SEC. And so, we've, experienced that of, spending $20,000 some odd dollars of creating the fund model to give ourselves another job and everything like that. And so we're learning, I think, is the biggest thing. We did it, the debt arbitrage money, go raise money at X, deploy it at Y, fund these deals, and, we take a percentage of it. But it's the family office market, I feel like, is where a lot of the opportunity to get that big capital infused in the space is, because they're a little more open to risk than Chase Bank or, whatever.
Right. Well, guys, man, that's a lot to take in with land. I know you guys got just different resources for people who are interested. Where can they find some of those resources?
Yeah, so our podcast, which you just were on, is the Big Picture Blueprint. And then Ground Up Partners, or GUP Land, is where, so gupland.com is where you can submit deals if you're looking.
GUP Land, that's the financing company.
Yep, and then Ground Up Fund, if you're an investor, an accredited investor looking to invest, go there, groundupfund.com. And then Mason or I are on all the socials.
Got a lot of stuff there. So, guys, we'll link to that down below. But dude, appreciate you guys coming on. That was super insightful, and I think there's lots of money to be made. And so, guys, if you got a deal, I mean, for a lot of people who are listening to this who are investors, I mean, obviously you can go invest, but I think there's probably a lot of guys like me who just come across land deals and we're just like, I don't know, man. I don't want to deal with this. So go check them out. Go hit them up, and they'll look at the deal. And if they can make some of it, I mean, he'll call the county commissioner for you, you know? So appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming on. I'm excited to see kind of what happens in the future.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks,
That was
Ryan.
great.
Yep. Cool. Guys, subscribe. We'll see you. Peace.